So let's talk about anxiety. What's that thing that's bothering you? Now, you might look back and think about a friend who's hurt you, or you might think about your current situation and wonder why that family member has let you down. Or you may think about a mentor, someone you look up to. Um, oh, they're not there anymore. They turned their back on you. They left you. You might think of a colleague that you really need or needed, but they were busy and they weren't there for you. You might think about that old flame, someone who you really gave your heart to, someone who you fell in love with, but they turned or moved on. Even that child of yours who seemed to move away or push you away, and that really broke your heart. And that may have written something on the chambers and the walls of your heart. People are unreliable, it reads. But suddenly you look and he is still standing there. Always was, because Jesus is always there. He said, I will never leave you or forsake you. He said, I am with you even until the end. And when he speaks his promises, they are true. His words are reliable. You can take that word to the bank and there's a cashier at the door waiting. You don't even need to cash it in. They will hand it to you. That's the analogy that I want to present to you about the faithfulness of God. And that being the premise for building this defense, this argument that there is nothing really to be anxious about. So let's look at this from three angles. Let's look at it from the angle of, is there anything to be anxious about? In the face of real controversy, in the face of real distress, in the face of true problems, can we actually say that there's nothing to be anxious about? Also, what's happening all that time that I am being anxious? What should I be doing? Or what can I actually do about that situation? Also, what's God doing about this? Or what is God able to do about this? And then, what should my next step be? Well, we're going to look at this, firstly, from that first angle, from that number one point, which is, what's happening? Well, what's happening while you're anxious depends on what you're doing in the face of that anxiety. Here's a proposal, and this may seem incredibly illogical. It may seem like the last thing that feels right. But here it is. Worship him. And by worshiping, you might wonder, well, what is this whole worship thing and how's it done? Sit in your calm corner. Shut the door. That's why we named this Shut the Door. This podcast is about shutting the door to the noise and sealing yourself in the place of his poise and staying there. And let me tell you, worship is a number of things. It's not just singing. Sometimes it's staying. Sometimes worship is silence. You'll read about that wonderful word called Selah. Selah isn't just silence in a vacuum. Selah is a silence that allows you to reflect on what God's done and what he can do. Selah is powerful. And you can do that in your worship moments. You can read out a psalm. That's worship. And then you can go over it and you can ask God, what are you saying to me through these Psalms? The book of Psalms is so rich in prayers and in adoration that you can verbalize. and use as your worship. What else can you do in worship? Of course, you can sing. You can sing that song. You can play that atmospheric sound and frequency that we sometimes, technically, we call it pads, but you can hear it, and in that moment, it just allows you to seal out whatever it is that's eating at you and focus just a little bit more on the God who is protecting you and keeping you from harm and waging, this is important, waging that war on your behalf. So there's a nutshell of what God's doing. Here's a verse that will really encourage you. The Bible says in Romans chapter 8 that we know that all things work out for the good of them that love God, to those called according to his purposes. Last week, we looked at the caller, the calling, and the called. And the calling is so essential to living your life because that's what we need to spend the rest of our time doing. Adam was called to tend a garden. And outside of that, he was walking with God in the cool of the day, before work and after work. And during your midday, walk with God, talk to God, because it pushes away anxiety. Something about the moments that we spend with God replaces the fear, the tension that we feel as a result of whatever is plaguing us or taking our minds off of God. Because essentially, that is what anxiety does. It takes our mind off God and it centers it on what it is that we call a problem. But we move from there by finding ourselves in a place of worship, surrendering to God. I want to go back to silence for a minute. Silence is just so powerful. And just staying silently. Have your coffee in your hand if you're a coffee drinker, or just sip some water if that helps you. But stay quiet sometimes. And those are the moments where he prompts you. Sometimes you don't even feel or see anything or hear anything. But when you walk out, suddenly all of these ideas or reassurances start to take place in your heart. And what it is all of that was being downloaded in your time of worship and surrender. We can talk a bit more about worship and what worshiping God in your private moments, in those moments where you've shut the door, what it looks like. We can talk about that more a bit later on in some of our future podcasts. But another reassurance I want to give you is what God is able to do. In those moments of distress, controversy, in those moments of horrible pushback, what is God able to do? Well, 2 Corinthians 9 verse 8 says that, and God is able. That means God is waiting on you with this ability. He can make all grace abound towards you. Can you see waves and waves of grace? Grace, that thing that we don't deserve, but that enables us to do the impossible. God is able to make all grace abound towards you, so that you, always having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work. So if your anxiety is about something stopping you from doing what it is that you feel assigned to do, God is able to give you enough grace so that you abound and always having all sufficiency abound in that good work. That's what God is able to do. And that's why, leading me on to my last point, that's why there really is no need to be anxious. But the problem's there and it's real, I know. But then what do we do? Well, here's what to do. Don't be anxious, because again, in Philippians 4:6, it says that we shouldn't be anxious about anything, but in everything, with all prayer and supplication, we should let our requests be made known to God. What's that saying? So it's saying don't worry about anything. Pray about everything. Thank God for what he's done. and project. Think about the future that he's bringing to you because he's able, remember. And then something happens. The peace of God that passes all understanding, it comes in to keep your heart and your mind. That chamber where the anxiety previously occupied is replaced by the overwhelming peace of God. And this grows. It grows in the place of worship. The place and practice of worship makes it grow. And then suddenly you're able to move on and do what God is calling you to do, is assigning you to do, is instructing you to do in that moment, in that season. And he does it by his Spirit. You see, all anxiety wants to do is to replace God's voice. All anxiety tends to do is to occupy the operation center, the command center, all right? It wants to become the pilot that pilots your ship or that pilots your plane. And it wants to be the driver that drives you. But guess where it's driving you? It's a cousin of fear. So they're related, fear and anxiety. And all they do is they battle against what you're called to do by taking your faith away. So don't let it. How? Get into that place of worship and then think. Think not about the things that you're worried about. Replace thought. Learn to replace anxious thoughts. And that is found in Philippians 4 verse 8. And now, my dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Use the NLT for this because I love it. And it really uses language that you can easily digest, and it captures everything in Paul's speech really well. It says, and finally, my brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on whatever is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. It says, think about things that are worthy and excellent. So excellent things that are worthy. Think about things that are worthy and excellent. And then the God of peace will be with you. I'm going to go over that one last time because I think this is the culmination. This is the how-to. And now, my brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on whatever is true. The fact is, what you're worrying about it because you think it will wipe you out. You think that it will end you. You think that it can take away God's eternal promises, but that's not true. And then it says, think about things that are honorable. Think about things that are right. Is it right? No, well, don't think about it. Think about things that are pure. Think about things that are lovely. I know that unlovely and impure thoughts try and permeate the process of your thinking throughout the day. Here's a trick. It's easy. You just say, I disown you. I renounce you, and I choose not to think this. And in that moment, something happens because you are the actual pilot of your ship, and you can hand it to Jesus or hand it to the enemy. And when you hand it to the enemy, well, that's you being anxious and not doing anything about it and just allowing yourself to seethe in that anxiety. But when you take it and give it to Jesus, what you're doing is you're thinking about what Jesus is. You're thinking about who he is. You're thinking about who Father God is, and you're worshiping him and you're thanking him. Darkness will run. It cannot exist in the same space as love. And when you speak and sing about the love of God and think about those things, you will grow in this. Start and practice this because you will grow in this. Think about things that are lovely. Think about things that are admirable and worthy of praise. The God of peace will then be with you. Okay? Now, I want to leave you here because I know that these things take practice. So take these away. Walk in these things. Allow them to grow in you. And may the God of peace be with you. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.